Before the story starts, subscribe if you don't want to miss what happens when truth finally comes out. My mother never whispered it. She said it plainly, like a fact everyone already knew. "You were never pretty," she told me once, while adjusting my sister's hair in the mirror. "So you should have at least been smart enough to compensate." I stood behind them in my bedroom doorway, holding a dress I'd saved allowance money to buy. I remember thinking she hadn't even looked at me before saying it. She didn't need to. In her mind, the verdict had already been passed years ago. My name is Mira Collins, and in my family, I was the reminder of what didn't turn out right. We grew up in Brighton Hills, a quiet, expensive suburb where every lawn was trimmed, every driveway was clean, and every family cared deeply about appearances. My parents, Evan and Lorraine Collins, owned a chain of boutique fitness studios across the city. They were respected, admired, invited everywhere. My younger sister, Elena, fit perfectly into the image they curated. She was beautiful in the way people noticed immediately, the kind of girl teachers praised, neighbors complimented, and strangers remembered. She had a sharp mind, endless confidence, and a smile that made my parents glow with pride. I was the opposite. Not ugly in a dramatic way, just forgettable, quiet, awkward. I liked drawing, designing things on my old laptop, rearranging colours and shapes until they made sense. I didn't sparkle. I didn't command attention. And in my family, that was a crime. Growing up, I learned quickly that love in our house was conditional. Elena got affection by existing. I had to earn mine. If she brought home a good grade, my parents celebrated. If I brought home an award, they asked why it wasn't something more impressive. If she cried, they comforted her. If I cried, they told me to toughen up. My father used to say it openly. "Elena has star quality," he'd say to guests. "Mira is more practical." Practical was the polite word they used instead of disappointing. At family dinners, my mother would tell stories about Elena's achievements, then pause, turn to me, and say, "And Mira is figuring things out." I was always figuring things out. When I turned 18 and left for Northlake University, it felt like the first breath I'd taken in years. I chose to study visual design and digital media, something that made my chest feel lighter when I talked about it. My parents hated it. "You're wasting an opportunity," my father said. "That's not a real career," my mother added. "Artists are people who couldn't succeed at anything else." Elena laughed from the couch. Still, they paid my tuition barely and reminded me constantly that it was a favor I could lose at any moment. College should have been my escape. Instead, it became another battlefield. Every phone call home felt like an interrogation. Every visit back turned into a lecture. My mother criticized my weight, my skin, my posture. My father asked about my grades like he was checking stock prices. Elena compared my progress to hers like it was a competition she enjoyed winning. "You know," Elena said once during a holiday dinner, "if Mira spent half as much time studying as she does drawing useless things, she might actually succeed." Increed. Everyone laughed. I smiled too, because not smiling made things worse. By my third year, the pressure crushed me. I stopped sleeping properly. I stopped eating regularly. I stopped believing I was worth anything at all. I missed classes. Deadlines slipped. My mind felt like it was constantly underwater. When I tried to explain to my parents that I wasn't okay, my mother dismissed it immediately. "You're just being dramatic," she said. "Everyone gets stressed," my father added. Elena never complained. my mother finished. That's when I broke. Not loudly, not in a scene, quietly. One night, sitting alone in my dorm room, staring at unfinished projects and unread messages, I realized I couldn't keep going like this. My chest felt tight. My thoughts were dark. I was scared of myself. Leaving college wasn't a decision made out of laziness. It was survival. When I told my parents, the reaction was explosive. My mother screamed first. "You're embarrassing us," she shouted over the phone. "You're throwing your life away," my father said coldly. "You were never cut out for this anyway," Elena added, smug as ever. They didn't ask why. They didn't ask how bad it had gotten. They didn't ask if I was safe. My mother delivered the final blow in a voice so calm it scared me. "If you drop out, don't bother coming back. We're not supporting failure." I came home anyway, hoping stupidly that seeing me in person would change something. It didn't. They gave me 1 week. 1 week to pack my things and leave the house I grew up in. No money, no backup plan, no second chances. On the last night, I stood in the hallway listening to laughter from the living room. Elena was showing my parents photos from her internship. My mother's voice was full of pride. "You're everything we hoped for," she told her. I dragged my suitcase to the front door. My mother followed me, arms crossed, eyes sharp. She looked me up and down one last time. "Ugly college dropout," she said. "I knew this would be how you turned out." Then she leaned closer and lowered her voice. "Don't ever come back. I don't want people asking about you." The door slammed behind me. I stood there on the porch of Brighton Hills, suitcase at my feet, watching my reflection fade from the glass. I was 22 years old, and I was completely alone. I didn't cry on the sidewalk. Not because I was strong, because my body didn't know what to do with the shock yet. I just stood there with my suitcase, staring at the door like it might open again if I waited long enough. Like my mother might suddenly remember she had another daughter and come running out, hugging me, saying she didn't mean it, but the house stayed quiet. Warm light spilled through the curtains, and behind that glass, my family continued living like I didn't exist. So I picked up my suitcase and started walking. Brighton Hills looked the same as it always had: perfect lawns, perfect fences, perfect smiles. It was the kind of neighborhood that made you feel like something must be wrong with you if you didn't fit in. And I didn't. My phone buzzed once, and for a split second, my heart jumped. Maybe my father, maybe my mother. But it was Elena. One message. "Don't make this about you. You did this." That was it. "No." "Are you okay?" "No." "Where will you go?" "No, let me help." Eek. Just a neat little knife twist, so clean it almost looked polite. I stopped at the edge of the neighborhood, where the streetlights thinned out and the sidewalk stopped being perfect. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I opened my contacts, staring at names I hadn't spoken to in a while. Old classmates, distant friends, people I had smiled at but never leaned on, and I realized something brutal. My parents weren't just cutting me off financially. They trained me my whole life to believe I didn't deserve support from anyone, that I was a burden, that asking for help was embarrassing, that needing anyone was weakness. So when I finally hit a moment where I actually needed help, I barely knew how to ask. Still, survival makes you humble fast. I called the only person I trusted to pick up without judgment. Leah, a friend from college who used to sit beside me in the design lab. She answered with a sleepy, "Hello?" And within seconds of hearing my voice, she was fully awake. "Mira? What's wrong?" I tried to speak, but my throat locked. Leah didn't push. she just said. Where are you? Like it was the most normal thing in the world to rescue someone at night. When she arrived, she didn't ask questions in the car. She didn't lecture. She didn't tell me what I should have done. She just drove. And when we reached her apartment, small, cluttered, warm, she grabbed a blanket, handed me a glass of water, and pointed to the couch. Sleep, she said softly. You're safe. That word safe felt unfamiliar. I slept like someone who'd been holding their breath for years. The next morning was the real beginning. Reality doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in. Leah made coffee and eggs like she was feeding a wounded animal. She asked gentle questions. I answered what I could. I told her I dropped out. I told her they threw me out. I told her the words my mother used. Leah's face changed as I spoke, her expression hardening into something protective, something angry. She said that to you? Leah whispered. I shrugged like it didn't matter. Like it was normal. But Leah didn't let me normalize it. That's not normal, she said, sharp. That's cruelty. And even then, I wanted to defend my mother. I wanted to say she didn't mean it. Because when you grow up in a house like that, you learn to swallow poison and call it dinner. Leah, let me stay for a bit. But a bit turned into days. And days turned into a quiet desperation. Because I knew I couldn't live on Leah's couch forever. So I got a job, not a career. Not a dream job, a job. The kind of job you get when you're trying not to fall through the cracks. I worked at a cafe in the mornings, smiling until my cheeks hurt, taking orders from people who barely looked at my face. Then I cleaned offices at night, wiping fingerprints off glass conference room walls while the city slept. Between shifts, I taught myself again, not from textbooks, from free tutorials, old videos, broken laptops. I didn't have the luxury of learning slowly anymore. Everything became urgent. If I wasn't working, I was studying design software. If I wasn't studying, I was building a portfolio. If I wasn't building, I was searching for small businesses that needed help. I started by offering cheap designs, a menu, a logo, a simple website banner. Then the work got better, and then the clients got better. And slowly, something changed inside me. Not confidence, not happiness. Something sharper, determination. Because every time I heard my mother's voice in my head, ugly dropout, I answered it with action. Not words, action. I learned to stop asking my family to love me. And I started building a life that didn't require their permission. Leah didn't stay my only lifeline. Eventually, I found a tiny apartment, cheap, dim, barely enough space to breathe. But it was mine. I bought second-hand furniture. I ate simple meals. I wore the same 2 pairs of shoes until the soles thinned. And I kept working. I kept building. I didn't post about it. I didn't tell anyone in my family. I didn't even let myself fantasize about proving them wrong. Because that kind of thinking is addictive. You start living for revenge instead of living for yourself. So I made a rule. I would only measure myself against yesterday. Did I learn something new today? Did I improve my work today? Did I push my life forward today? That was it. No dramatic speeches. No, watch me win. Just quiet progress. But the world notices quiet progress sometimes. A local boutique hired me to redesign their branding. A small clinic asked me to refresh their website. Then a bigger company reached out. Someone had seen my work. They paid real money. Enough money that I could breathe. And once I could breathe, I could finally hear myself think. That's when I realized how much damage my family had done. How much of my life had been spent trying to earn crumbs from people who never planned to feed me. Months turned into years. My work became my identity. Not the way my family defined me, failure, embarrassment, but the way I defined myself. Creator, builder, survivor. I started freelancing full-time. Then I hired a part-time assistant, then a second person. And suddenly, without even realizing it, I wasn't just doing design, I was running something. A real studio. Not massive, not flashy, but real. I got invited to local business events. People shook my hand, called me talented, asked how I built it. Sometimes I'd smile politely and say, long story, because it was the kind of story that makes people uncomfortable. People love success stories until they hear what it cost. Then they get quiet. Still, I never reached out to my family. Not once. I changed my number. I stopped driving near Brighton Hills. I stopped checking Elena's social media. Because every time I did, it felt like touching a bruise. And I told myself I didn't need closure. I told myself moving forward was enough. And for a long time, it was. Until the message arrived. It came through a social account I barely used. A message request. From a name I recognized instantly. Mary's Hale. A girl I went to school with. Not a friend. More like one of the people who watched. You know those people? Not bullies. Not allies either. Just witnesses. Her message was cheerful, casual, like we were old friends. Hey, I don't know if you remember me, but I heard you're back in the city. Elena's graduation celebration is coming up and it's going to be huge. Everyone's going. You should come too. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. My first instinct was suspicion. Why now? Why would anyone invite me? Why would my sister's circle even think of me? Then my eyes moved to the detail that made my stomach tighten. Maurice added, your parents are going to be so proud. They keep talking about how successful you are now. I felt my chest go cold. They keep talking about me? I hadn't spoken to them. I hadn't even been near them. How could they be talking about my success? And then something darker occurred to me. They weren't talking about me. They were talking about a version of me they could use. A version that made them look good. I reread Maris's message again and again. And I realized the trap wasn't the invitation. The trap was the lie. Somehow, my parents had been telling people a story about me, one that benefited them. And something about that made anger rise in my throat like bile. Because they didn't get to discard me and then claim me when it was convenient. They didn't get to throw me out like trash and then tell the world they raised a successful daughter. That night, I didn't sleep. I paced my apartment, replaying every insult my mother ever threw at me. Every time Elena smirked, every time my father praised her while ignoring me. And the strangest part, it wasn't grief anymore. It was clarity, because I finally understood what this was. They weren't inviting me back because they missed me. They were inviting me back because they wanted control of the narrative. They wanted to keep their image clean. And apparently, my existence threatened that. So I made a decision. I would go, not to beg, not to reunite, not to cry and forgive. I would go to look them in the eye as someone they couldn't crush anymore. I would go as the woman they tried to erase. The day of the graduation celebration arrived. I spent the morning working because keeping my routine felt like armor. But my hands were restless. My mind kept jumping ahead. What if they pretended not to recognize me? What if they acted like I was the problem again? What if Elena tried to humiliate me in front of everyone? Then I caught myself. Old Mira would have feared humiliation. New Mira? New mirror had been humiliated already, thrown out, mocked, left alone. There wasn't much left they could do that would be worse than what they'd already done. So I got ready slowly. Not flashy, elegant, clean lines. A simple dress that fit well and made me feel like myself. Sharp, composed, unbreakable. I did my makeup the way I liked it, soft but confident. And when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the ugly drop out. I saw a woman who had crawled out of the dark alone. A woman who built something from nothing. A woman who didn't need anyone's approval, but was about to collect something anyway. The truth. I grabbed my bag and left. The venue was exactly what you'd expect from my parents. Not warm, not personal, expensive, staged. A place built for photos and applause. There were bright lights, polished floors, staff moving quietly like shadows. There was a decorated entrance with Elena's name on a backdrop, guests taking pictures, like it was a celebrity event. And as I stepped inside, I heard it. My mother's laugh, that familiar sound, practiced, proud. The laugh she used when she wanted people to believe her life was perfect. I walked forward and saw them. My parents, Elena, surrounded by people, smiling, so proud, so whole, like they had never destroyed anyone. I paused near the entrance, watching for a moment. My sister was glowing, wearing a beautiful gown, receiving compliments like she was royalty. My father stood tall and confident. My mother looked radiant. And the scene made something rise in me, not jealousy, not sadness, something colder, because I didn't feel like I was watching a family. I felt like I was watching a performance. And I had just walked in backstage. I didn't rush toward them. That was the first difference. Old me would have stood at the edge, heart pounding, wondering whether to leave before anyone noticed. Old me would have questioned whether I belonged in a room like this, but I had already survived worse rooms. Rooms where I begged for understanding, rooms where I was told I was worthless, rooms where love was conditional and silence was punishment. So instead of freezing, I moved. Slowly, calmly, like I had every right to be there. I blended into the crowd at first, letting the noise wash over me. Glasses clinked, compliments floated through the air. My sister's name was spoken again and again, always followed by admiration. I listened, and that's when I heard it. My name, not spoken directly, but woven into conversations like a convenient footnote. "She's the older one, you know," my mother said to a group of well-dressed guests. "Very successful, always has been. Always has been." I almost laughed. Another voice chimed in. I heard she works internationally now. Very impressive. My father nodded proudly. She's always been driven. We're so proud of both our girls. Proud. The word felt foreign on his tongue. They spoke about me like I was a trophy they kept in storage, polished when needed, hidden when inconvenient. I stood there, holding a glass I hadn't touched, and realized something quietly devastating. They didn't feel guilty. They didn't feel conflicted. They had rewritten history so thoroughly that they believed their own lies. And that realization flipped a switch inside me. This wasn't about closure anymore. This was about ownership of my story. I moved closer, not toward my parents, toward my sister. She was laughing with a group of peers, people dressed like success had always been their birthright. They congratulated her, asked about her future, her plans, her achievements. Someone asked casually, "Do you have siblings?" My sister hesitated. "Just a fraction too long." "Yes," she said carefully. "An older sister, but we're not close." Not close. That was how she framed abandonment. She didn't really handle pressure well, my sister continued, her voice smooth. Some people just aren't built for demanding paths. I felt the words hit my spine like ice water. Not built for it. After everything I'd survived, after everything I'd built, I stepped forward before I could overthink it. Interesting way to describe it. My sister turned, her smile faltered, confusion flickered across her face as she looked at me, really looked. Then recognition hit. Her expression collapsed. "Mirror," she whispered. The group went quiet. I smiled, polite and controlled. "Congratulations," I said. "You look exactly like someone who's never had to fight for anything." A few people shifted uncomfortably. My sister recovered quickly. She always did. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her tone sharp but low. "I was invited," I replied calmly. "Apparently I'm very popular in stories these days." One of her friends frowned. "You're her sister?" I nodded. "The one who apparently works everywhere and nowhere at once." My sister's jaw tightened. "This isn't the time." "For what?" I asked softly. "For the truth?" That's when my mother noticed us. Her eyes widened. She froze mid-laugh, mid-gesture. I watched her carefully, how the panic flashed before the smile snapped back into place. Years of social training kicked in instantly. "Mira!" she exclaimed, stepping forward as if this was the most natural thing in the world. "Why didn't you tell us you were coming?" I met her gaze. "Why didn't you tell people I existed?" Silence rippled outward. People nearby leaned in, pretending not to listen while listening closely. My father appeared beside her, posture stiff. "This isn't appropriate," he said quietly. "You're right," I replied. "What's inappropriate is pretending you raised a successful daughter after throwing her out." Gasps. Someone dropped a fork. My mother's smile cracked. "You're being dramatic." "No," I said evenly. "I'm being precise." A woman from earlier, one of my father's colleagues, stepped forward, confusion written all over her face. "You told us your daughter was overseas, that she couldn't attend." "I am your daughter," I said calmly, "and I've been here the entire evening." My father's face darkened. "Enough. Enough lies," I corrected. The room had gone quiet now. All eyes were on us. I felt no fear, only steadiness. "You disowned me," I continued, my voice clear. "You told me I was an embarrassment. You cut me off. You told me never to come back." My mother shook her head. "That's not how it happened." "Then explain," I said, turning slightly so the crowd could hear. "Explain why I left with a suitcase and no support. Explain why I built my entire life without a single call from you." My sister scoffed. "You chose to leave." I turned to her slowly. "No," I said. "I chose to survive." The difference mattered. Someone near the back murmured, "Oh my God." I wasn't yelling. That was the scariest part. I didn't need to. "I didn't come here to beg," I continued. "I didn't come for reconciliation. I came because you don't get to erase me and then use my existence when it benefits your image." A man I recognized from earlier, the one my sister had been speaking to, looked between us. "So, the stories about her success? They're true," I said simply. "They just have nothing to do with them." That's when a stranger stepped forward. A man in a tailored jacket, calm, observant. He had been watching quietly from the edge of the room. "I believe you," he said, addressing me. Everyone turned. He looked at my parents next. "I've worked with many families like yours, image-driven, reputation-focused, but what you've done here tonight is remarkable. 2, Guy, my father bristled. And who are you? The man smiled faintly. Someone who recognizes talent when I see it. He turned back to me. Your work? I've seen it. Quietly impressive, thoughtful, resilient. My mother's eyes widened. You know her? Yes, he said calmly. Professionally, not personally. And that's the difference. The room buzzed. My parents looked like the ground had shifted under them. I had no idea she was this accomplished, the man continued. You must be proud. I didn't look at them. I answered for myself. I am. That was the moment the power changed hands. Not because I embarrassed them, but because I no longer needed anything from them. My father stepped forward, his voice tight. This is private family business. No, I said. This is public truth. You made it public when you lied. I took a breath. Then I delivered the line I'd never allowed myself to imagine. You don't get to tell my story anymore. I turned to my sister. I hope your success brings you peace, I said sincerely. But it won't fix what you broke. Her eyes flashed with anger and fear. My mother reached out. We can talk later. No, I replied gently. We're done talking. I placed my glass on a nearby table, untouched. I came. I saw. I reclaimed my name. Then I walked away. Not fast. Not shaking. Not looking back. The calls came later. Missed calls. Messages. Apologies wrapped in excuses. I didn't answer. Because the victory wasn't the silence that followed. It was the quiet inside me. The peace that comes when you stop chasing approval from people who never planned to give it. I went home to the life I built, to the future I chose. And for the first time, I slept without dreaming of their house. Because I finally understood something simple and freeing. You don't win by proving them wrong. You win by outgrowing the room they tried to trap you in.